Aliens clear human girl's backpack and go pale when they see uniform folded inside. The patrol cruiser moved through the empty space like a predator hunting for prey. Its dark hull reflected no light from the distant stars. The ship was long and narrow, built for speed and combat. On its sides were painted symbols that marked it as a vessel of the Empire, one of the most powerful forces in the known galaxy. Inside the ship, Commander Oz stood on the bridge with his hands clasped behind his back. He was tall for his species, nearly 7 feet, with blue-gray scales that covered his entire body. His face was flat and wide, with 4 pale eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. 2 larger eyes sat in the middle, while 2 smaller ones rested above and below them. This gave the perfect vision in almost every direction, a trait that had helped them become excellent hunters long before they discovered space travel. Oz had served in the military for 32 years. He had fought in 3 wars, commanded 5 different vessels, and earned more combat honors than he could easily count. But lately, his duties had become boring. Patrol missions along the border of contested space were necessary, but they rarely offered any excitement. Most days passed without incident. Ships came and went. Cargo vessels moved through the sector carrying goods between colonies. Occasionally, a smuggler would try to slip past, and his crew would have something to do. But those moments were rare. Today, however, something had appeared on their sensors. "Commander," said Lieutenant from his station at the tactical console, "we are detecting a vessel approximately 40,000 kilometers ahead. It appears to be drifting without power." Oz turned his head slightly, his upper eyes focusing on the display screen that was studying. "What type of vessel?" "Small transport, civilian class. The design signature indicates it is of human origin." Human? The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Oz felt his scales tighten slightly, an involuntary reaction that his species experienced when facing potential danger. The humans had never been friends. Their 2 civilizations had clashed several times over the past 50 years, fighting over territory, resources, and simple pride. The wars had never lasted long, but they had been brutal. Both sides had learned to respect the other's strength, even if that respect was mixed with hatred and fear. The most recent conflict, the incident, had ended 7 years ago. Oz still remembered it clearly. A single Terran warship had somehow destroyed an entire in a matter of hours. The official reports claimed it was due to superior tactics and unexpected weapon systems. But the survivors told different stories. They spoke of human soldiers who moved like shadows, who appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. They spoke of a ship that seemed to know every move they would make before they made it. That battle had changed everything. They had been forced to sign a treaty that gave the humans control of 3 valuable star systems. It was a humiliation that still burned in the hearts of every warrior. "Is the vessel armed?" Oz asked. "Negative, Commander. It appears to be a standard civilian transport. No weapons detected. No shields. It is completely dead in space." "Life signs." Adjusted his controls, running a deeper scan. 1 life sign, human. The readings indicate a female in good health. Oz considered the situation carefully. A human vessel drifting in contested space, carrying a single passenger. It could be nothing. A simple mechanical failure that had left some unfortunate traveler stranded. These things happened all the time in the vastness of space. But it could also be something else. The border tensions between the Galactic Concord, which included the Empire, and the Terran Republic had been growing worse for months. Diplomats on both sides were exchanging harsh words. Military forces were being moved to strategic positions. Many believed that another war was coming, perhaps sooner than anyone wanted to admit. In such times, finding a human alone in this sector was suspicious, very suspicious. "Bring us alongside," Oz ordered. "Prepare a boarding team. I want that vessel searched and the human brought aboard for questioning." Nodded sharply, "Yes, Commander." The cruiser changed course, its powerful engines pushing it toward the drifting transport. As they drew closer, Oz could see the human ship more clearly on the main display. It was small, barely larger than one of his own shuttles. The hull was painted white with blue markings, typical colors for human civilian vessels. One of the engine pods on the rear of the ship was blackened and damaged, clearly the source of its problems. The vessel appears to have suffered an engine failure, reported. The damage is consistent with a power surge in the main drive system, a common malfunction in older human transport models. Convenient, Oz said quietly. Commander. Nothing, continue the approach. The boarding team assembled in the cruiser's main airlock. There were 6 of them, all armed with standard pulse rifles. Their leader was Sergeant Al, a veteran soldier with dark gray scales and a long scar running down the left side of his face. He had earned that scar fighting humans during the incident and had never forgotten it. Remember, Oz told them through the communication system, the human is to be brought aboard alive and unharmed. We need information, not a corpse. Understood, Commander, Al replied. His voice carried a hint of disappointment. The 2 ships connected with a soft clang as the cruiser extended its boarding tube. The airlock doors opened, and the boarding team moved forward into the human vessel. Oz watched through the cameras mounted on their armor. The inside of the transport was small and cramped. A narrow corridor led from the airlock to the main cabin, with doors on either side leading to a tiny sleeping area and an even tinier bathroom. The walls were covered with faded decorations, pictures of landscapes and animals from the human called Earth. Small personal items were scattered around, the kind of things a traveler might bring on a long journey. The human was sitting in the pilot's chair when they found her. She was young, Oz noted. By human standards, she appeared to be in her late teens or very early 20s. Her hair was brown, pulled back into a simple tail behind her head. Her eyes were a greenish color that reminded Oz of certain plants he had seen on tropical worlds. She was wearing simple civilian clothes, a gray shirt and dark pants, nothing remarkable. When the boarding team burst into the cabin with their weapons raised, she did not scream. She did not run. She did not even seem particularly surprised. She simply looked up at them with those green eyes and raised her hands slowly, showing that they were empty. I was wondering when someone would come, she said. Her voice was calm, almost tired. My distress beacon has been broadcasting for 3 days. Al kept his weapon pointed at her chest. You are in contested space, human. This area is under patrol authority. You will come with us for questioning. Okay, she said simply. Al seemed thrown off by her easy compliance. He had expected resistance, or at least fear. Humans usually showed fear when facing soldiers, but this one acted like being captured by an enemy patrol was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Stand up slowly, Al ordered. Keep your hands where we can see them. She did as she was told, rising from the chair with smooth, unhurried movements. She was shorter than Oz had expected, barely reaching the chest of the soldiers surrounding her. Humans were generally smaller than his people, but this one seemed particularly compact. May I bring my bag? She asked, gesturing toward a backpack that sat on the floor near the chair. It has all my belongings in it. Al looked at the bag suspiciously. It will be searched. That is fine. There is nothing dangerous in it, just clothes and personal items. The sergeant nodded to one of his soldiers, who grabbed the backpack and slung it over his shoulder. Then they marched the human out of her ship and into the boarding tube, escorting her to the cruiser. Oz met them in the main corridor outside the airlock. Up close, the human looked even younger than she had appeared on the cameras. There was a softness to her face that made her seem almost childlike, but her eyes told a different story. They were steady and watchful, taking in every detail of her surroundings without obvious fear. I am Commander Oz of the Imperial Navy, he said, speaking slowly so the translator unit could convert his words accurately. You are being detained for questioning. What is your name? Cole, she replied. I am a citizen of the Terran Republic. I was traveling home from a study abroad program on the colony world of New Geneva when my ship's engine failed. I have been drifting for 3 days, waiting for rescue. A study abroad program, Os repeated, letting his doubt show in his voice. Yes, I was studying xenobiology, learning about different alien species. She glanced at the soldiers surrounding her. Although I have to say, this is closer contact with than I ever expected. Os did not smile. They did not smile. Their faces were not built for such expressions, but he felt a flicker of something that might have been amusement at her calm words. Take her to the interrogation room, he ordered. Search her belongings thoroughly. I want to know everything about our guest. Cole did not resist as the soldiers led her deeper into the ship. She walked between them quietly, her eyes still moving, still watching. Os followed at a distance, studying her movements. She walked steadily, without hesitation, like someone who knew exactly where she was going even though she had never been on this ship before. That bothered him. The interrogation room was located in the lower section of the cruiser, far from any critical systems. It was a small space with metal walls that had been polished to a mirror shine. A single chair sat in the center of the room, bolted to the floor. Restraints were built into the armrests and the front legs, designed to hold even the strongest prisoners in place. The soldiers pushed into the chair and locked the restraints around her wrists and ankles. She accepted this without complaint, settling into the seat like it was a comfortable couch rather than a prison. These are very cold, she said, wiggling her fingers. Do you have any blankets? Al ignored her. He placed her backpack on the examination table against the wall and began removing items one by one, placing each object in a separate pile for analysis. Os stood near the door, watching both the search and the prisoner. Entered a moment later, carrying a data tablet that he would use to record the interrogation. Let us begin, Os said. Miss Cole, you claim to be a student returning home from an educational program. Is that correct? Yes. What were you studying? Xenobiology, like I said, the biology of alien life forms. New Geneva has one of the best programs in the Republic for that field. And why were you traveling through this sector? There are safer routes to human space. Shrugged or tried to. The restraints made the gesture difficult. Faster routes, too. I took this path because it cuts almost a week off the journey. I knew it was a little risky, but my mother is expecting me home for dinner. She is making pot roast. I really did not want to miss it. Pot roast, I said flatly. It is a human food. Meat and vegetables cooked together slowly until they are very tender. My mother makes the best pot roast on our whole planet. I have been dreaming about it for months. Looked up from his tablet. Commander, I am detecting no deception in her vocal patterns. Either she is telling the truth or she is very skilled at lying. Humans are known for their deception, Os replied. We cannot trust their words alone. That is why we search. At the examination table, Al was still removing items from the backpack. He had already set aside a data tablet, a water container, several packets of dried food, a small device for grooming, and a collection of clothing items. Nothing suspicious had appeared yet. This is all very boring, Al muttered. Student supplies and personal effects, nothing useful. Keep looking, Os ordered. Watched the search with apparent disinterest. You will not find anything dangerous, she said. I already told you, I am just a student trying to get home. We will be the judges of that. Al pulled out a book, an actual physical book made of paper and binding. They did not use such primitive methods of storing information. Everything in their society was digital. Seeing an actual book was like seeing a fossil from an ancient era. What is this? Al asked, holding it up. A novel, said. A story. It helps pass the time during long journeys. Why not use a digital reader like a civilized being? I like the feel of paper, the smell of the pages. It reminds me of home. Her voice softened slightly. My father used to read to me from books like that when I was little, before he died. As noted the shift in her tone. Genuine emotion or another trick. With humans, it was always hard to tell. Al tossed the book aside and continued searching. He found a small pouch containing photographs, actual printed images on glossy paper, another primitive habit of the humans. He spread them out on the table and examined them. Family pictures, he reported. Older male and female, probably parents. Younger male, perhaps a sibling. Various locations, all appearing to be on human worlds. My mom and dad, confirmed. And my little brother, Danny, he is 16, just started his final year of school. He wants to be a Marine like. She stopped suddenly, pressing her lips together. Like who? Os asked, his attention sharpening. Like our uncle. He served in the military years ago. Danny has always looked up to him. Os filed that information away. A family connection to the Terran military. Interesting, but not conclusive. Many human families had members who had served. It was part of their culture. Al reached deeper into the backpack. His clawed hand found something at the very bottom, something that had been carefully tucked away beneath everything else. He grabbed it and pulled it out. It was fabric, dark-colored, neatly folded. Al set it on the table and began to unfold it. As he did, Os saw colors emerge from the dark material. Black cloth with silver trim along the shoulders, some kind of garment. No, not just a garment. A uniform. Al's scales went pale, shifting from their normal blue-gray to a sickly white color. His hands trembled slightly as he held up the uniform for everyone to see. It was a military dress uniform, the kind humans wore for formal occasions. The fabric was high quality, well-maintained despite being stored in a backpack. The cut and style were immediately recognizable to anyone who had studied Terran military organizations. But it was the patches on the uniform that made Os feel his own scales begin to lighten. On the left breast, above the heart, was an emblem that every warrior knew. It had been burned into their collective memory by blood and fire. A silver crescent moon wrapped around a burning star, the symbol of the Terran Republic Marine Corps. The soldiers in the room went very still, even stopped writing on his tablet, his 4 eyes fixed on the uniform with something close to horror. Os forced himself to remain calm. His mind raced through possibilities, calculations, assessments. The uniform alone meant nothing, he told himself. Anyone could obtain a military uniform. Perhaps she had found it somewhere. Perhaps it belonged to someone else. Perhaps this was all a misunderstanding. Then Al turned the uniform slightly, and Os saw the second patch. It was smaller, positioned just below the main insignia. A skull with crossed rifles behind it, surrounded by a ring of text. The words were in the human language, but the translation software in his implant converted them instantly. Omega Company, Reapers. The room seemed to grow colder. Os knew that name. Every who had ever faced the Terrans in combat knew that name. Omega Company was a legend, a nightmare, a horror story that veterans told to young recruits to make them understand the true danger of fighting humans. The Reapers. They were the ones who had been responsible for the incident. A small team of them had infiltrated the flagship and sabotaged its systems from within. They had killed the entire command staff without being detected, then escaped before the ship exploded. The rest of them had been thrown into chaos, unable to coordinate their defense. The lone Terran warship had picked them off one by one. Those were the official reports. The unofficial stories were worse. Survivors spoke of soldiers who could see in complete darkness, soldiers who could move without making any sound, soldiers who could kill with their bare hands, quickly and silently, leaving no trace of their presence. They said the Reapers were not normal humans. They were something else. something that had been trained and modified and shaped into perfect killing machines. They had studied them obsessively after the war. Intelligence agents had gathered every scrap of information they could find about Omega Company. Most of it was classified by the Terran government, hidden behind layers of security that even the best hackers could not penetrate. But some facts had emerged. The Reapers only recruited from the best of the best. Their training program lasted 3 years and had a failure rate of over 90%. Those who survived emerged as something more than ordinary soldiers. They were specialists in infiltration, assassination, sabotage, and unconventional warfare. They operated in small teams, often behind enemy lines, completing missions that regular forces could not handle. There were estimated to be fewer than 300 active Reapers in the entire Terran military. And now one of them was sitting in his interrogation room. Oz looked at Cole with new eyes. She had not moved in her chair. Her expression had not changed. But there was something different about her now, something he had not noticed before. A stillness in her posture, a focused quality to her gaze. She was watching them react, studying them, analyzing them, just as they had been analyzing her. "That uniform," Oz said slowly, forcing his voice to remain steady. "It belongs to you." It was not a question. He already knew the answer. Was silent for a moment. Then, very slowly, a small smile crossed her face. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been playing a game and had finally decided to reveal their cards. "I was wondering when you would find it," she said. "You took longer than I expected." Al dropped the uniform like it was on fire. His weapon came up, pointing directly at her head. "Commander, we need to alert the fleet immediately. If she is one of them, if she is a Reaper." "If I were here to kill you," interrupted calmly, "you would already be dead, all of you." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "I counted 12 crew members on my way to this room," she continued, her voice as casual as if she were discussing the weather. "Your security protocols have at least 3 major weaknesses that I noticed during the short walk from the airlock. Your ventilation system runs through the entire ship and is large enough for a human of my size to navigate freely. The guards you posted at key intersections are positioned to watch the corridors, but they do not check the ceiling or the floor panels, both of which could be used for movement or ambush." She tilted her head slightly, her eyes finding Oz and holding his gaze. "And you, Commander, you keep your sidearm on your left hip, but you are right-handed. I noticed it immediately. That means your draw time is approximately 0.4 seconds slower than it should be. In a combat situation, that delay could be fatal." Oz realized his hand had moved toward his weapon without conscious thought. He stopped himself, forced his arm back to his side. She was not wrong. He had worn his sidearm on the left for years. A habit he had developed after an injury to his right hip made that position uncomfortable. He had never thought of it as a weakness. She had seen it in seconds. "You are not acting like a prisoner," Oz said carefully. "Because I am not a prisoner," replied. "Not really. These restraints are standard detention cuffs, Model 7 if I am not mistaken. The locking mechanism is electronic, controlled by a signal from the security console, but the circuitry is vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. A strong enough pulse would release all 4 locks simultaneously." She raised her hand slightly, and Oz heard a soft click. The restraints on her wrists fell open, clattering to the floor. Every weapon in the room came up instantly. Al and his soldiers aimed at her from multiple angles, their fingers on triggers, ready to fire. Did not move. She did not stand. She did not attack. She simply sat there with her hands free, looking at them with that same calm expression. "Relax," she said. "I told you already, I am not here to fight." "Then why reveal yourself?" Oz demanded. His hearts were beating faster than they should. He could feel the tension in the room, the fear radiating from his soldiers. "You could have maintained your cover. We would have found nothing incriminating if you had hidden that uniform better. We might have let you go." "Maybe," agreed. "Or maybe one of your analysts would have noticed something, a pattern in my movements, a skill I should not have, a reaction that did not match my claimed background. Maintaining a cover requires constant effort, constant vigilance. It is exhausting." She released the restraints on her ankles with another series of clicks, then stood up slowly. Every weapon tracked her movement, but she ignored them as if they were not there. "I was genuinely just going home," she said. "That part was true. My tour ended 6 months ago. I completed my final mission, submitted my reports, and received an honorable discharge. I am not active duty anymore. I am just Cole, civilian, former student, trying to get back to Earth to see my family." "Former student?" asked. His voice was shaky. "The study abroad program was my cover when I was recruited. Xenobiology at New Geneva. I actually completed most of the coursework in between training sessions and field exercises. I have a degree and everything. My mother was very proud when I graduated." Oz tried to process this information. A Reaper who was no longer on active duty. A deadly warrior who claimed to be retired. It seemed impossible. The intelligence files suggested that Reapers served until they died or were too injured to continue. The Terran military did not simply let such valuable assets walk away. "Why did they discharge you?" he asked. Something flickered across face. A shadow quickly hidden. "Personal reasons. I completed my required service term. They offered to let me re-enlist, but I declined." "Why?" "Because I wanted to go home." Her voice softened, losing some of its hard edge. 3 years is a long time. 3 years of missions and training and never being able to tell anyone who I really was or what I was really doing. I was tired. I am still tired. All I want is to see my mother and eat her cooking and sleep in my own bed for the first time in 3 years. She looked around the room at the soldiers pointing weapons at her. "Is that so hard to understand?" Oz studied her face, searching for signs of deception, but he saw only weariness and something that might have been loneliness. For a moment, she did not look like a legendary warrior. She looked like what she claimed to be, a young woman far from home who just wanted to see her family. But he could not forget what he knew about the Reapers, what they were capable of, what they had done. "Lower your weapons," he said quietly. Al spun toward him. "Commander, you cannot be serious. She is a Reaper. She could kill us all before we could stop her. If she wanted us dead, we would already be dead. She said so herself, and I believe her." Oz kept his eyes on. "Lower your weapons. That is an order." The soldiers hesitated, their training warring with their fear. Then, slowly, reluctantly, they obeyed. Weapons were pointed toward the floor, though fingers stayed near triggers. "Thank you," said. "Do not thank me yet," Oz replied. "You are still a prisoner on my ship. You have admitted to being a member of an elite enemy military unit. Even if you claim to be retired, I cannot simply let you go. I understand. You need to follow procedures, make reports, consult with your superiors." She nodded toward her uniform, still spread out on the examination table. "May I put that back in my bag? It is the only thing I have left from my service. My mother wanted to see it." Oz considered the request. It seemed harmless enough. The uniform was just fabric and thread, not a weapon. And something about the way she had asked, the quiet longing in her voice, made him want to grant it. "Sergeant Al, return the uniform to her belongings," he ordered. Al picked up the uniform like it was a dangerous animal, handling it with the tips of his claws. He folded it roughly and shoved it back into the backpack. Carefully said, "Please, it took me an hour to get those creases right." Al paused, looking at her with disbelief. She was worried about creases. This woman who could apparently kill everyone in the room without breaking a sweat was concerned about wrinkles in her uniform. Humans were strange creatures. He refolded the uniform more carefully and placed it gently in the bag. "Thank you," said again. She turned to Os. "So what happens now? Do I stay in this room? Do you have a cell somewhere? I should warn you, your standard cells probably will not hold me. The locks are the same model as these restraints." "You will remain in guest quarters under guard," Os decided. "You will be treated with courtesy as long as you do not attempt to escape or harm any member of my crew. I need time to consider the situation and consult with my superiors about how to proceed." "Fair enough. Can I have my book back? It gets boring with nothing to read." Os nodded to Al, who retrieved the paper book from the table and handed it to her. She took it with a smile that seemed almost genuine. "Thank you, Commander. I appreciate you being reasonable about this. Do not make me regret it." They moved her to guest quarters on the upper deck, a small room that was normally reserved for visiting officials or dignified prisoners. It was comfortable enough, with a proper bed and a washing facility. 2 guards were posted outside the door at all times, and sensors were activated to track her movements within the room. Not that any of that would stop her if she really wanted to leave. Os understood that now, but he had to maintain the appearance of security, if only for the sake of his crew's morale. In his office, Os composed a message to Fleet Command, carefully describing the situation. He explained that they had captured a human who claimed to be a former member of Omega Company, the unit known as the Reapers. He requested guidance on how to proceed. The response came 3 hours later, marked with the highest priority flags. "Hold the prisoner. Do not release under any circumstances. A specialized team is being dispatched to your location for extraction. Estimated arrival, 36 hours. Os read the message twice, then a third time. A specialized team. That meant intelligence operatives, interrogators, people trained to extract information from unwilling subjects. They would take Cole somewhere dark and secret, and they would make her tell them everything she knew about Terran military operations. If she really was what she claimed to be, a retired Reaper just trying to go home, then she was about to have a very bad experience. But that was not his concern. He was a military officer following orders. His duty was to the Empire, not to enemy prisoners. So why did he feel uneasy? He pushed the feeling aside and returned to the bridge. There was nothing more he could do until the extraction team arrived. The next several hours passed quietly, remained in her quarters, apparently reading her book. The guards reported no suspicious activity. She had asked for food at one point, and they had provided her with standard rations. She had eaten them without complaint, though she mentioned that they were very different from human food. Os found himself checking the monitoring feeds more often than necessary. He told himself it was simple caution. She was dangerous, after all. He needed to make sure she stayed contained. But part of him was simply curious. She spent most of her time reading, lying on the bed with the book propped against her knees. Sometimes she would pause and stare at the ceiling for long minutes, her face expressionless. Sometimes she would flip through the photographs that the guards had returned to her, studying the images of her family with a distant look in her eyes. She did not try to escape. She did not threaten the guards. She did not do anything except wait. On the morning of the second day, Os decided to visit her again. He found her sitting on the edge of the bed, the book closed in her lap. She looked up when he entered but did not stand. "Commander," she said, "come to check on your prisoner. I wanted to ask you some questions." "I figured you might. Go ahead." Os took a position near the door, keeping distance between them. "Why did you really leave the Reapers? The truth this time." Was quiet for a moment. Her fingers traced the cover of her book, following the embossed patterns in the leather. "I told you the truth before," she said finally. "I was tired, but that is not the whole story." "Then tell me the whole story." She looked up at him, and for the first time he saw something vulnerable in her expression. Not weakness exactly, but a kind of openness that had not been there before. My last mission, she said slowly, was on a world called Hadrian IV. It was a conquered colony, part of the territory disputed between our governments. There was a research facility there, working on some kind of biological weapon. My team was sent to destroy it. Oz felt a chill run through him. Biological weapons were forbidden by interstellar treaty. If the Conquered had been developing such things, it was a serious violation. We completed the mission, continued. We destroyed the facility and all its research, but there were complications. The scientists had been using test subjects, prisoners from captured Terran vessels, including civilians. Her voice remained steady, but her hands had tightened on the book. Most of them were dead before we arrived. The experiments had killed them, but a few were still alive. We tried to save them. We called for medical evacuation, did everything we could, but we were too late for most of them. She paused, taking a slow breath. There was a girl among the survivors, young, maybe 12 or 13. She had been taken from a civilian transport 6 months earlier. The things they had done to her, shook her head slightly. She died in my arms. I held her and told her it was going to be okay, that she was going home, and then she was gone. The room was very quiet. After that, I could not do it anymore, said. I completed my required service, submitted my final reports, and requested discharge. My commanding officer tried to talk me out of it. They offered promotions, special assignments, anything to keep me. But I was done. She looked up at Oz, meeting his 4 eyes with her too. That is the whole story, Commander. That is why I left. Not because I was too weak to continue, but because I had seen too much, done too much. I needed to remember what it felt like to be a normal person before I forgot entirely. Oz did not know how to respond. He had expected tactical information, details about Terran military operations that he could use to gain favor with his superiors. Instead, he had received something far more personal, far more human. The extraction team will arrive tomorrow, he said finally. They will take you somewhere for detailed questioning. I know, I have been expecting that. They will not be gentle. Smiled, but there was no humor in it. Neither am I, but I have survived worse than interrogation. You could tell me what they want to know, make it easier for yourself. I could, but I will not. Not because I am protecting military secrets, but because there is nothing to tell. I have been out of the service for 6 months. Any tactical information I have is already outdated. They will ask me questions I cannot answer, and they will not believe me when I tell them so. She stood up and walked to the small window that looked out into space. The stars drifted past slowly as the cruiser maintained its patrol route. I just wanted to go home, she said quietly. That is all. Is that really so much to ask? Oz had no answer for her. He left the guest quarters and returned to the bridge, his mind troubled by thoughts he could not quite identify. The extraction team would arrive tomorrow. They would take her away. The matter would be out of his hands. But he could not shake the image of her standing at the window, looking out at the stars, wanting nothing more than to see her family again. 12 hours later, everything changed. It started with an alarm from the sensor station. His voice cut through the routine silence of the bridge. Commander, multiple contacts detected, approaching at high speed. They emerged from hyperspace without warning. Oz was at the tactical display in seconds. The screen showed a cluster of signals bearing down on their position. 6 ships. No, 7, 8. Identification, he demanded. Unknown, Commander. They are not responding to hails. Their weapon systems are charging. Oz felt his heart begin to pound. This was not the extraction team. They were not scheduled to arrive for another 12 hours, and they would have announced their presence properly. These ships were attacking. Battle stations, he roared. Raise shields and prepare all weapons. Signal the fleet for immediate assistance. The cruiser's alarm systems came to life. filling the ship with pulsing red light and harsh warning tones. Crew members ran to their stations, preparing for combat. The unknown ships opened fire. The first volley struck the cruiser's shields with tremendous force, shaking the entire vessel. Consoles sparked and flickered. The lights dimmed briefly before emergency power kicked in. "Shields holding at 60%, reported. "They are hitting us with concentrated plasma fire. These weapons are more powerful than anything in our intelligence files." Another volley struck, 40% shields, then 30. OS returned fire with everything they had, but the enemy ships were fast and maneuverable. His gunners could barely track them, let alone hit them. "Who are these attackers?" he demanded. "Unknown, Commander. They do not match any known profile." "Wait." His voice trailed off and his scales went pale. "Commander, I am picking up a signal from the lead ship. They are broadcasting on an open channel." "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a voice filled the room. It was speaking in the language, but with a strange accent that Os did not recognize. "Vessel, you are holding something that belongs to us. Surrender the human female and you will be allowed to leave. Refuse and your ship will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply." The channel went dead. Os stared at the tactical display, trying to make sense of what was happening. Someone wanted coal. Someone with a fleet of powerful warships that had appeared from nowhere. Who would attack a military vessel to rescue a single human prisoner? The answer came to him a moment later, and it made his blood run cold. The Terrans. It had to be the Terrans. They had tracked their missing Reaper somehow and sent a strike force to retrieve her. These ships were probably prototype vessels, equipped with advanced technology that they had never seen. But why would they go to such lengths for one person, even a Reaper? Why risk war over a single retired soldier? Unless she was not really retired. Unless this whole situation had been a trap from the beginning. "Commander," shouted, "they are charging weapons again. Impact in 20 seconds. Os made a decision. Open a channel to our guest quarters. The communication link activated with a soft tone. "Miss Cole," Os said, his voice tight with controlled fear, "there are ships attacking us. They are demanding your release. Would you care to explain what is happening?" There was a pause. Then's voice came through the speakers, and for the first time since he had met her, she sounded genuinely surprised. "Ships? What kind of ships?" "Unknown design, advanced weapons. They claim you belong to them." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. The weariness was gone, replaced by something hard and focused. "Commander, those ships are not Terran. I do not know who they are, but they are not from my government." "How can you be certain?" "Because the Terran Republic does not rescue retired personnel. Once you are discharged, you are on your own. If they wanted to extract me, they would use diplomatic channels, not military force." The ship shook again, as another volley struck the failing shields. "Then who are they?" Os demanded. "I do not know, but if you let me out of this room, I might be able to help you find out." Os hesitated. Every instinct told him this was a bad idea. Releasing a captured Reaper during a combat situation was insane. She could be working with the attackers. This whole thing could be an elaborate plot to destroy his ship and crew. But his shields were failing. His weapons were ineffective. In a few more minutes, they would all be dead anyway. "Open the guest quarters," he ordered. "Bring her to the bridge, armed escort." The guards did not argue. They were too busy trying to stay on their feet as the ship rocked under continuous fire. Arrived on the bridge less than 2 minutes later, flanked by 2 soldiers who looked barely able to hold their weapons. She moved past them without acknowledging their presence and went straight to the tactical display. "Show me their formation," she said. Looked to Os, who nodded sharply. The lieutenant brought up a detailed view of the attacking ships. Studied it for about 3 seconds. "These are not military vessels," she said. "The attack pattern is wrong. Too aggressive, not enough coordination. They are fighting like pirates or mercenaries, not trained fleet officers." "What difference does that make?" Oz asked. "Mercenaries can be scared. Regular military units follow orders until they die. Mercenaries follow money, and dead men do not spend money." She pointed to one of the larger ships on the display. "That is their command vessel. The others are support craft. If we can disable the command ship, the rest will probably retreat." "We cannot hit them. Our weapons are too slow." Turned to look at him, and there was something almost like excitement in her eyes. "Then we need to get faster. Do you have any boarding torpedoes?" "Yes, but—" "Load one, target the command ship. I will handle the rest." I stared at her. "You want to board an enemy vessel, alone, in the middle of combat?" "It is what I am trained for, Commander. Let me do my job." Another explosion rocked the ship. The shield display showed they were down to 10%. Oz had no better options. "Do it," he said. "Prepare the boarding torpedo." The torpedo bay was located in the lower section of the cruiser. Ran through the shaking corridors with a speed that surprised the soldiers trying to keep up with her. She moved like water, flowing around obstacles, never losing her balance despite the constant impacts. The boarding torpedo was a cylinder about 10 meters long, designed to punch through enemy hulls and deliver troops directly into hostile ships. It was a brutal weapon, used only in desperate situations when conventional tactics had failed. This definitely qualified. Climbed into the torpedo without hesitation. The interior was cramped and dark, barely large enough for a single human. There were no controls. Once launched, the torpedo would fly on its pre-programmed course until it hit something. "Lock onto the command ship," she called to the crew member operating the launch controls. "Aim for the engine section. That will be the least defended." "Are you certain about this?" he asked. His scales were nearly white with fear. "No," admitted, "but I am doing it anyway. Launch when ready." The torpedo door sealed with a heavy clang. Felt the vibration of the launch system powering up around her. "Commander Oz," she said through the internal communication system, "when I disable their command ship, you need to press the attack, everything you have. Make them think twice about staying in this fight." "Understood," Oz replied. His voice was strained but steady. "Good luck, Miss Cole." "I do not believe in luck, only preparation and execution." The torpedo launched. The acceleration was brutal, pressing back against the padded interior with tremendous force. The torpedo screamed across the space between the ships in seconds, weaving through defensive fire that tried and failed to intercept it. There was a tremendous crash as it punched through the enemy hull. Metal screamed and tore. Emergency systems activated, sealing the breach around the torpedo to prevent atmospheric loss. Was already moving before the dust settled. She kicked open the torpedo hatch and rolled out into a corridor filled with smoke and sparks. Warning alarms blared around her. She was inside the enemy ship. The interior was different from any design she had seen before. The walls were curved and organic-looking, covered with patterns that might have been decorative or might have been some kind of technology. The lighting was dim and reddish, giving everything a hellish glow. Two figures emerged from the smoke ahead of her. They were not human either. They were something else entirely. Tall and thin, with elongated limbs and faces that seemed to shift and change as she watched. Their eyes were solid black, reflecting no light. They wore armor that seemed to grow from their bodies rather than being attached. They raised weapons that looked like organic extensions of their arms. Was faster. She moved without thinking, her training taking over. The first enemy went down before it could fire, struck in a vulnerable point that her enhanced senses had identified in a fraction of a second. The second managed to get off a shot that missed her by centimeters before she closed the distance and ended the threat. Both attackers lay still on the deck, took one of their weapons and continued deeper into the ship. She did not know what these creatures were, but she knew where the command center would be. All ships followed similar logic in their design. The brain was always at the center, protected by the body around it. She found it 3 corridors later. The command center was a large circular room with a domed ceiling. More of the strange aliens were present here, working at stations that grew from the floor like bizarre plants. They turned as she entered, their shifting faces expressing something that might have been surprise. "Who are you?" demanded. "Why are you attacking that ship?" The largest of the aliens rose from what appeared to be a command chair. Its form was more stable than the others, more defined. When it spoke, the words came directly into her mind, bypassing her ears entirely. "We are the Seekers. We collect that which is valuable. You are valuable. Your mind, your training, your knowledge, all of it will be ours. I am not for sale. We did not ask for permission." The creature gestured and felt something push against her thoughts, a pressure, an invasion. They were trying to get inside her head, to take what they wanted directly from her brain. She had been trained for this. The mental defenses that the Reapers had drilled into her activated automatically. Walls of pure will, patterns of thought designed to confuse and repel psychic intrusion. The pressure against her mind met resistance and recoiled. The Seeker's face flickered with what might have been surprise. "Interesting," it said. "You have protections. We have not encountered this before. It will make the extraction more difficult but not impossible." More Seekers were entering the room, surrounding her. Too many to fight at once, even for a Reaper. But she did not need to fight them all. She just needed to stop the ship. Spotted what she was looking for on the far side of the room. A column of pulsing light that connected the floor to the ceiling. It looked important. It looked like the kind of thing a ship might not function without. She raised the organic weapon she had taken and fired. The column exploded. Everything went wrong at once. The lights flickered wildly. The deck tilted beneath her feet. The Seekers screamed, a sound that echoed inside her skull as much as in her ears. Their mental pressure vanished instantly as they struggled to deal with the crisis. Ran. She retraced her path through the corridors, moving faster than she had before. Behind her, she could hear the ship dying, systems failing one after another in a cascade of destruction. She needed to reach the breach where her torpedo had entered. That was her only way out. She found it just as the corridor began to collapse. The cruiser was still there, battered but intact. Commander Oss had followed her instructions. As soon as the command ship had lost power, he had pressed the attack with everything he had. The other enemy vessels were scattering, their coordinated assault falling apart without central direction. Looked at the gap between ships. It was perhaps 20 meters, too far to jump under normal circumstances. But she was not a normal person. She ran toward the breach, building speed with every step. At the last moment, she launched herself into space. The void embraced her, cold and dark and silent. She could not breathe. She could not hear. She could only see the ship growing closer and closer. A hand grabbed her as she neared the cruiser's open airlock. Then another. Strong arms pulled her inside, and the door sealed behind her. Air flooded the compartment. Gasped, drawing breath into her burning lungs. Sergeant Al was staring at her with an expression she had never seen on a face before. It might have been respect. "You are insane," he said. "Probably," agreed, "but it worked." On the bridge, Oss watched as the enemy fleet retreated into hyperspace, leaving their crippled command ship behind. The battle was over. His ship was damaged but intact. His crew had survived. Because of her. The human Reaper who had boarded an enemy vessel alone and disabled it from within. The same woman who had sat calmly in his interrogation room and talked about pot roast. When she arrived on the bridge, still breathing hard from her ordeal, He did not know what to say. "The enemy fleet has withdrawn," reported. "The command ship is dead in space. Should we board it, Commander?" "Yes, send a full security team. Find out what those creatures are and why they attacked us." Leaned against a console, catching her breath. "They called themselves Seekers. They wanted me for my knowledge, my training. They have some kind of psychic ability that lets them extract information directly from minds." "That is impossible," said. "I felt it. They tried to get inside my head. If I had not been trained to resist mental intrusion, they might have succeeded." Oz considered this information. A previously unknown species with psychic abilities and advanced technology. An enemy that collected valuable individuals for their knowledge. This was not just an attack on his ship. It was something much larger. "We need to report this to Fleet Command immediately," he said. "This changes everything." "It does," agreed. "Commander, I know you were planning to hand me over to your intelligence people. After what just happened, I assume that plan has changed." Oz looked at her. She was covered in dust and blood, some of it hers and some of it not. She looked exhausted and battered, but her eyes were still steady, still watchful. She had saved his ship, saved his crew. She had jumped through space without protection to get back to a vessel that had been holding her prisoner. "The extraction team will arrive in approximately 10 hours, he said slowly. "However, given the circumstances, I believe my report will need to focus on the new alien threat we have encountered rather than on individual prisoners." Smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Thank you, Commander." "Do not thank me yet. We still need to figure out what to do with you. You cannot stay on this ship forever." "I know. I just want to get home. I have been saying that since you captured me, and it has not changed." Oz made a decision. "When we reach the nearest for repairs, I will arrange transport for you to the border. From there, you can make your own way to human space." He paused. "I will also include a commendation in my report regarding your assistance during the attack. That may help if you encounter other patrols on your journey." "You would do that?" "You saved my ship, my crew. In culture, such debts must be repaid." Nodded slowly. "I understand. Thank you, Commander, truly. There is one thing I want in return." "Name it." "Tell me about the girl, the one on Hadrian 4. What was her name?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Emma. Her name was Emma. She was from a colony called New Providence. She liked to draw pictures and she wanted to be a doctor when she grew up." She paused, and Oz saw moisture gathering in her human eyes. "She never got the chance." Oz understood then why she had really left the Reapers. Not because of weakness, but because of strength. It took strength to walk away from everything you knew. It took strength to admit that you had reached your limits. It took strength to choose healing over continued battle. "I am sorry," he said. It was not a phrase used often. Apology was considered a sign of weakness in their culture, but this moment seemed to require it. "So am I," replied, "every day." They stood together on the bridge of the cruiser, two enemies who had become something else. Not friends exactly. Perhaps just two beings who had seen each other clearly for a moment. "Go get some rest," Oz said finally. "We have a long journey ahead." Nodded and turned to leave. At the door she paused and looked back. "Commander, the pot roast. I meant it. If you ever find yourself in human space, look me up. My mother would be happy to cook for you." Oz blinked all four of his eyes, genuinely surprised. "I am not sure human food would agree with my digestion." "Neither am I, but she would appreciate the company. She worries about me being alone." She left the bridge before he could respond. Oz turned back to the tactical display, where the crippled Seeker command ship still drifted, dark and silent. His boarding teams would soon reveal its secrets. The galaxy had just become a more dangerous place, and all of them, and human alike, would need to prepare. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today he had survived. His crew had survived, and somewhere out there, a young woman was one step closer to going home. It was enough. The story of Cole and her strange journey through space would become legend in the years that followed, told in whispers among military personnel on both sides of the border. The human reaper who had saved an enemy ship from an unknown threat, the warrior who had given up war for peace. Some said she made it home in time for dinner. Some said she never arrived at all, lost somewhere in the vast darkness between stars. Some said she returned to active duty when the Seekers attacked again, fighting once more to protect both human and worlds. The truth was simpler and more extraordinary than any of the legends. She did go home. She did eat her mother's pot roast. And her little brother Danny did become a Marine, inspired by his big sister's example. But that is a story for another time. For now, the stars drifted past the window of a small transport ship, and Cole sat in the pilot's chair, watching them go by. Her uniform was safely tucked in her backpack. Her book lay open in her lap. Earth was only 3 days away. She smiled and turned the page.